of a billionaire shipping tycoon. Now think of the Monopoly man. You're picturing him with a monocle, right? Except history says he never wore one. It's a collective trick of the mind, a Mandela effect. In our history books, they're just written by the guys who bought the ink. The history books tell a story of pure, unadulterated hubris. April 1912. The White Star Line launches the Titanic, the greatest ship ever built, unsinkable, a floating palace of steel and glass meant to define the century, the ultimate symbol of wealth, safety, and progress. But behind the gilded curtain, the White Star Line was bleeding to death. Flashback to 1911. Titanic's older sister, the Olympic, collides with a Royal Navy warship, the HMS Hawk. The hull is twisted, the keel is compromised. White Star Line fights the Royal Navy for damages all the way to the House of Lords. The insurance was voided. The company was facing immediate, staggering bankruptcy. They were stuck with a floating zombie ship, worthless, broken, and completely uninsurable. The world thinks they sailed a masterpiece into the Atlantic. But actually, maybe they were just desperate to get rid of a corpse. Actually, maybe. Belfast, early 1912. For a tiny, highly classified window of just a few weeks, the crippled, broken Olympic and the brand new Titanic sat side by side in Harland and Wolff's dry dock. To even the most skilled workers, the ships looked nearly identical. That wasn't a coincidence. They actually were nearly identical. Seriously, anyone could have just compared the blueprints. To the public, they looked identical, but to the accountants, they were the ultimate shell game. The interiors were interchangeable. The cutlery, the linen, the china, completely unbranded by ship name, only by company logo. Under the cover of corporate secrecy and midnight shifts, a hand-picked skeleton crew executes the parent trap of the Atlantic. They swap the bells, the compasses, the lifeboats, and lastly, the nameplates. The broken, patched-up Olympic leaves the dock wearing Titanic's nameplates. If she stays afloat, it's a miracle, and it's also a completely plausible, highly logical corporate insurance scam, which explains why, just days before departure, 55 high society passengers suddenly canceled their tickets, including the man who owned the entire shipping conglomerate, J.P. Morgan. He claimed a sudden, debilitating illness, yet journalists spotted him days later at a French resort, perfectly healthy, enjoying a cigar. He didn't have cold feet. He knew the ship wasn't coming back. But let's debunk the history book's biggest offense. J.P. Morgan wasn't a mass murderer. He wouldn't risk thousands of lives for a check. And they're right. He wasn't trying to murder anyone. Because in a perfect insurance scam, you don't just sink a flagship in the middle of the ocean without a safety net. You bring a getaway car. Enter the SS Californian, a White Star Line adjacent cargo ship. She leaves port under a cloud of secrecy, carrying 0 passengers. Her cargo manifest? 3,000 wool sweaters and thousands of blankets. Not weird at all. On the night of April 14th, she sails directly into the path of the Titanic, completely shuts down her engines in the middle of an ice field, and waits. The plan was foolproof. The patched-up Olympic strikes a small iceberg. The hole slowly fills. Californian steps in, transfers every single passenger safely to its deck. The ship sinks quietly into the abyss, and the evidence is erased forever. But they forgot one catastrophic variable. Captain Edward John Smith, the man with the worst safety record in transatlantic history, was put at the helm. Why? Because he was a company man who did what he was told. But a fatal navigation error puts them miles away from their floating rescue platform. The Californian sees the white distress rockets in the distance, but mistakes them for company celebration fireworks. And the ultimate insurance scam becomes history's most famous massacre. For over a century, the history books pointed to the ice. They built museums, wrote songs, and counted the dead to keep your eyes fixed on the tragedy. But the real skeleton isn't at the bottom of the ocean. It's what happened back on land. Look at the aftermath. If the real Titanic was actually the one that survived under the name Olympic, what happened to her? History says the Olympic sailed for another 20 years before being quietly scrapped in a British yard in 1935. No public fanfare, no grand preservation. The British government and J.P. Morgan's successors rushed to melt her down into scrap metal. Why? Because you can't leave the evidence floating in plain sight. When you track the money, the missing passengers, the interchangeable designs, and a corporate empire pushed to the absolute edge of bankruptcy, the pieces fit perfectly. 2 ships, 1 name, and $1 billion secret. The world wept for the Titanic. But actually, maybe she was melted down for scrap in 1935. Actually, maybe.